Hello and welcome to my channel, Haylee Marie Vintage. Today we are doing a sewing pile show-offs. I've been hard at work off camera working on 10 more projects again. I know what you're thinking, Haylee, you did one of these a few weeks ago, or maybe a few months ago. I don't know, time is not real. But recently, and the answer is yes I did, but because of my crippling anxiety about all the terrible things going on, I have been sewing to cope. So I have another 10 projects to show and I needed to get it done before the end of the year because these will be in my end of the year wrap-up totals. So we're gonna show these off. I'm really excited. I actually have some really great projects in here. Oh, hi. And I have a Spooky apparently. Say hi, Spooky. Hello. Hello. She'll probably sit in my lap for the rest of this video. Or not. Up to you. And now I'm going to share those projects with you. I have 4 shirts, 3 skirts, and 3 dresses. Yes, I do. Spooky was present for most of this sewing. The other thing is I did have Thanksgiving break, which usually means I have a 4-day weekend that weekend, I think, because I usually have that Thursday, Friday off. So I sew a ton those days, and usually I reserve that for off-camera sewing time. So that's also, I think, how I got there. But let's go ahead and kick it off. This first thing here, this is just a striped peasant blouse. So I really liked this pattern. However, it's definitely significantly too small for me. So what I've actually done is, after making this, I went and I hunted this pattern down and I bought it 2 sizes larger, which should put it as perfectly comfortable and great for my size. A lot of blouses, I have not upgraded their sizing yet because I was waiting to see basically, like, if my old sizing was easy enough to resize. With blouses, it's just a little bit more challenging because it involves bust lines and things like that. So I'm definitely going to be looking at upsizing my blouse pattern collection and selling off the smaller ones. So I did make this guy. As always, I have stats for you. This white striped peasant top took me 3 hours and 15 minutes, so super fast, which these blouses usually are because they're like so simple. It cost me $47.04. So this fabric itself was just a little pricey, and this pattern is also usually a pretty pricey pattern. Usually I'd be using this pattern a ton more, but because, again, I wasn't satisfied with the fit, I'll actually be selling off this pattern and instead using the bigger size up pattern. I just definitely can't do a size 10 or 12 in blouses anymore. It needs to be a size 14, 16, and I'm just too lazy to size up those patterns because it's gonna require the slash and spread method, and I just don't enjoy that enough in most cases for how many blouse patterns there are out there. I actually just got a huge order in of 14, 16 blouse patterns, so I'm pretty excited about that. Next up is this beautiful teal number. This is actually done with a size 14 pattern, and this one fits perfectly. It's really, really comfy. I actually wore it to work today. I do wish the collar kind of like slouches or does weird things. I actually think I should have put a lightweight interfacing in this, and I actually think I needed to put like a medium weight because I think the idea is the collar like hugs your neck. Really comfortable. I'm gonna make this pattern again. I might at some point look at doing some sort of collar adjustment because I am not sure I'm fully sold on this collar. However, this took me 6 hours and it only cost me $15.98 because the pattern was pretty cheap. The fabric was really cheap. This is from that sale that I paid by the pound. I actually think a majority of the cost is the buttons and the pattern. So that's pretty cool, and I will definitely be using this pattern again because I really like it. I think it looks really cute on me. This is a pattern I picked up recently from Backroom Finds. It looks really, really nice. However, I don't think it's the pattern's fault. I don't like this blouse, at least not completely. But I have worn this, and one of the problems, I think, hopefully you can tell, is I put the shiniest bit of the fabric inside because I felt like a slightly less shiny blouse would be more useful in the workplace. This has resulted in something that is just entirely too slippery. This blouse just like moves weird on my body, so I think that's some of my responsibility. Next time I make this blouse, I really like the sleeves. I think I need to just try this in like a really light drapey cotton fabric and see how I feel about it. But one of the things I do factually know I don't like about this is this collar is just too large on me. So I think what I'm gonna do is actually redraft this collar and probably do like a cute little Peter Pan collar or something like that because this just doesn't work for me. This one took me 8 hours. That's the last thing. This pattern, I don't even know how to express how terribly wrong the instructions were. I pretty rarely find vintage patterns that I don't feel like had like adequate pattern testing or were written correctly or stuff like that. But this one, I don't know what was going on, but it was bad. they were asking me to do something that in all my years of sewing, I've never seen an instruction ask me to do, and it's physically impossible, which basically, like, they wanted me to sew the cuff with no gap planned here, and it just like made no sense. Yeah, and next time I make this, I'm gonna make a little facing here so I can actually have a gap here and it's not as weird and it makes more sense, because I think this has a ton of potential. Don't get me wrong, I'm gonna use this pattern again. I just think it didn't work in this state. On top of taking 8 hours, actually this one only cost me $25.69. So all the fabric that I bought by the pound at the one sale this year, I am basically sewing patterns that I don't feel sure about. Like, as in, I don't know, I want a practice of some sort. So with that, I am pretty happy with the price of this. I'm going to try styling it a few other ways and see if I feel better about it. But if not, I feel pretty firmly that this is going to be in my next closet declutter, which is a bummer because I love this color. So I think I will be on the lookout for another fabric this color to make another blouse in that is just not this blouse. Not everything in that you sew is a success, and that's why you buy some really, really cheap fabrics and mock things up, because in most cases the wearable mock-up works. Everything I've shown you basically today has been what I would consider a wearable mock-up. This blouse I adore. So this is a bow tie blouse with a bow on it. I picked up this fabric, and I picked up this fabric knowing what type of pattern I wanted to use it for, and luckily I had a pattern, I had the right yardage, we were good in all that. This took me only 4 hours too, which is always a huge bonus. I was pretty happy at that. It was $22.15 to make. Wow, is that it? Wow, that's so cheap, and I adore this. I feel so cute in this blouse. It works really well with a cardigan. This is a really useful blouse. It's, I think, great for the summer as well as being great for the fall and winter. So I'm thrilled. And I liked the pattern I used for that a lot too. Next up, we have some really basic skirts. So I actually made this skirt on camera, not this skirt, but I made a teal skirt using this pattern. I really, really like that teal skirt. It is like the perfect amount of swish for me. I found once I get to a certain swish on a skirt, I get annoyed because a lot of like tables at home are kind of low, and so if too big of a skirt, it means I knock things off tables constantly. So I actually prefer, I think this is a half circle skirt or a 3/4 circle skirt, but this is my preferred, and I actually made 2 more skirts with it, this being one. This is made of some blue plaid I picked up at Pendleton. This took me 3 hours, and it cost me $26.99 because I picked up this wool really cheap at Pendleton because it's such an intense color scheme that it was deeply, deeply discounted, and I'm really happy with it. I think it turned out really, really cute, and I've worn it and it's really comfortable. It's amazing what a game changer it is when you wear skirts that fit you properly. And the second skirt I made out of that pattern is this one here. This is a really beautiful, very, very lightweight speckled wool. I see this being useful for probably 9 months out of the year, if not 10 months out of the year. I think there's really only 2 months of the year here where it's too hot to wear something like this, because this is like basically a sheer wool. This also took me 3 hours, and it cost me $16.09 to make. Again, even though it's wool, this is because this is wool I picked up at our creative reuse center locally called Seattle Recreative, which they've now moved their price to $3 a yard, but back when I bought this, it was $2 a yard. The last skirt is this one here. This took me 5 hours. So what makes it unique is it has like a kind of higher waist and almost as like a overall. However, if I take off the straps, it works perfectly as just a normal skirt. I adore this. I got this corduroy from free for one of my friends who gave it to me. And so this only cost me $19.84 to make, and that's mainly because the pattern was pretty expensive. So the more of this that I make, the cheaper it'll get, and I will definitely be making more of these. I love this piece. Now we're getting into dresses. So this dress should look familiar to you. Whoops. I made some of this dress on camera, but this was my mock-up. It's just gonna continue to fall off. This was my mock-up for, I did like a blue silk evening gown from the 1930s, and I did a little day dress mock-up. So this is that mock-up. I kept the hem like pretty normal every day, like it's whatever length, but I've definitely found with most gown patterns, if you make them out of like a day-to-day fabric, they work really great for a day dress. I wear this one to work all the time with like a little turtleneck underneath, and it's perfect. This took me 8 hours and 45 minutes and cost me $55 $2.95. So this was a pretty affordable project for being like a really long, complicated gown. Next up, I'm really excited about these two. I've been trying to work through my stash to mixed success. These were both fabrics that I was feeling inspired by when I headed out to Thanksgiving. This first one here is this little coffee cup dress. I picked up this coffee cup fabric in Korea. It's like a pretty decently heavy-ish weight. Like it's probably technically an upholstery fabric, which these I like to make like these no gathers, and it's like a house dress because I feel like a sturdier house dress is always really nice. This took me 7 hours, which is not too shabby. I can definitely, from the first half to the second half of the year, can tell that I've improved strictly in the speed I'm able to sew things. Whenever I sew off camera, I can go a little faster because I don't have to assemble things in an order that I can narrate. And then this cost me $71.66, which is kind of pricey for basically this being a house dress. I mean, of course I wear it out, but it does have, I think, like 11 plus buttons, and I do my buttons by like a per button rate, which right now is 79 cents a button is about what I pay, because I get a lot of fancy fun vintage buttons like these ones. These ones are some really cool 40 buttons. And then I did also use lace, so all of those kind of added up costs. This pattern did not instruct you to use lace, but I thought it would be a nice touch. We've been chewing up some yardage here, and this is my last piece. This is my, I think, favorite piece I've made off camera, and probably my favorite day dress I've made recently, with the like white buttons up the front and the lace and the little pocket. I think this turned out really well. This is some fabric I've had in my stash. I think this I bought, like, this was probably in the first few months that I started sewing. So this was like definitely a gold fabric, which is funny because now this is not a gold fabric for me. Most of my gold fabric, or like stretch fabric or fabric I'm scared to cut in, is a lot more expensive. But back when I started sewing, this was like $8 or $9 a yard, and that was expensive for me because I was buying most of my things at the local creative reuse center. But anyway, this took 9 hours and 15 minutes, which isn't shocking when you think about it, because I had to put in all these buttons, all these button loops, lace. I think this is what took the longest time. And then it only cost me $58.01. I actually know majority of the cost was the pattern. The pattern for this was a New York pattern, which is always kind of expensive. I am debating whether at some point I'll make this one on camera, which reminds me, since I didn't make this one on camera, so this pattern, which I will have popped up here, has 2 collars. Options, one is like a Peter Pan collar, and one is the collar you see on it now, the stand collar. So I first put on the Peter Pan collar and it looked terrible. So I ripped it off and then I put in this collar. So that also added to the time. I would bet I lost at least a half hour, if not an hour, to that process. It wasn't working. I think other dresses with this pattern, I could totally make a Peter Pan collar work. Sometimes things don't work, and you have to be open-minded enough to like go back and redo that work. And I'm really happy I did that, because if I had left the Peter Pan collar on it, I would have hated this dress, versus the standing collar I absolutely adore on this dress. Just always something to think about if you don't like a project. Look at the variations and how hard it might be to switch variations very late in the game, and if you have enough fabric. And consider doing it, because every once in a while what looks good in your head doesn't look good in real life. This was just like way too like stuffy and detailed with the Peter Pan collar, but with the stand-up collar, it really accentuates this front, which is what I really wanted accentuated. But that wraps us up. This is the last kind of sewing adjacent, well, that's not true. I was gonna say this is the last sewing video of the year, but next week I'm gonna do my sewing wrap up, where I'm gonna go over my favorite projects of the year, my least favorite projects of the year, and then I'm gonna go through a ton of numbers, like what percentage of each color I made, what fiber was most popular, what was my average time it took to finish a project, what was my average price in doing a project, stuff like that. So it should be really fun, especially if you enjoyed this video, you should enjoy that video, because I'm gonna go over, I think I counted up and I sold like 54 items last year, which I guess is a spoiler alert on this video. Basically, I have 54 projects that I'm kind of talking about. I'm not talking about all of them in detail. All of these I've taken a lot of stats. If you see this spreadsheet, I don't know if it's all washed out. I only covered 3 rows of stats in this video, and there are 7 rows of different stats that I take. So we're gonna have some nerdy data fun. So hopefully you look forward to that. Make sure to subscribe and stick around for that video, and I will see you then. Bye.